Right, welcome everybody. Before we start, I'd like to ask everybody to introduce themselves, because obviously some people don't know who others are. So this is.
Oh, right. I'll start with the good stuff. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tom Bovey, for this purpose, monitoring officer of the council.
I'm Diana Osborne, chairman and councillor.
I'm Wendy Crane, committee clerk for this purpose.
Amy Howard, councillor for Drayton Ward and Daventry.
Sean Collins for Drayton Ward and Daventry as well.
I'm councillor Gary for Abbey South Ward.
I'm Steve Loads, I'm an independent auditor.
David Knight, independent person.
Brilliant, thank you. At least we know who we all are. Right, minutes. For those of you that were here last time, which I'm sure. Yeah, Stephen and Sean, yeah. Have you both read the minutes? Are you all okay? Would you like me to sign them? As a true and correct record? Yeah?
Very true.
All okay? Thank you. Right, apologies for absence, please.
Sean Nick, Boodle, Terry Craven and Roger Lowe.
Thank you. Is that all we have? Yes, okay then, thank you. So, declarations of members' interests to any of the items on the agenda. No? Okay. Thank you. Right, item 4. Annual review of standards of code of conduct for complaints handling. This is to consider the report of monitoring officer to update members on events during 2015 to 16.
Thank you, Chair. I always feel guilty of having dragged people in once a year for this committee. Tell you when there haven't been any hearing panels in the meantime, and that really is a reminder as to what the purpose of the committee is. It's not to be a committee, frankly. It's to be able to deploy itself to be hearing panels when needed. But actually, we haven't had to do that this year. So I'll come on to that later, but that's the excuse for dragging you in. So I'll take you through what's been happening in 2015-16 and just give you a sense of how that fits in the county context as well. It's always important to get a sense of comparison. Yeah? So I've done your report as I normally do in terms of the experience with some advice, and this time the advice is all matters that you can resolve as a committee rather than anything that needs to go off to the council. But this amounts to the annual report which is required under our constitution to the committee to report on what it's done to council, and this serves that purpose. So that's a helpful tool in itself for other members as well to see. And fundamentally what this committee is about is trying to be the font of promotion and maintenance of high standards of conduct. So as a result of that, I try and give you pointers to what might be the topics for further development. And I'm a perfectionist by nature, which means I'll never get there. Which means I'm always looking for something to improve or change. So I would rarely come to you with advice which says do nothing. So apologies for that in some sense, but hopefully you'll take it the right way, which is always something that can be improved by or refreshed and reviewed. Okay. In terms of national context, there haven't been any changes to legislation and the like in 2015-16. There is something potentially in the news arising from a concern, and I've mentioned the case in Saddleworth, which is public information, where the local MP raised with the relevant minister a concern about essentially the sanctions available. And if you recall, for those who've been members of the committee for more than a year, you'll recall that there's been some concerns about the limited sanctions available under the new regime, i.e. since the Localism. And this is the first time it's probably got to a head. Previously, the Committee for Standards of Public Life, which is the national body that oversees this stuff, has been raising concerns and monitoring the situation. But it takes an example sometimes to bring it to fruition, to get some improvement in the sanctions. And I think genuinely there should be some better sanctions. However, something may come in during the course of the year, but we wait to see. The government will consult, so we'll see what happens on that. In terms of the local situation, I keep getting approaches from councils, so members, officers, and I include clerks in that context, on issues which are probably similar to what we've had in the past. So disclosure of interest, when not to do it. Involvement in planning. And some of us heard just before the meeting, planning gets very passionate. And it's usually that area where you get concerns. things to do with predetermination will not become important for people. I've said such and such. Does that mean I can't say such and such again? Or someone's accusing them of saying such and such, can I not say it again? So that issue comes up. It came up in our training session last time, and I'll recommend something on that next time, later on. But bullying and disrespect has also come in as contact points. Do not get me wrong, there aren't millions of contacts here. But of the issues I get, it tends to be on those sorts of things. But, I'll get, I don't know, I've not counted up the contacts in the course of the year, because sometimes it's a phone call and what have you. But if the complaint alone numbers, the contacts will be, I say 100 for a rank figure. Yeah? So I'll get that sort of contact coming through from various members and clerks and the like. Frankly, the questions normally come from parish level. We did have a training session on February 10th. I'm trying to think if some of you were there for that session. Yeah, you were there. And there were some good case scenarios, which were quite useful, I think. And the feedback seemed to be quite good. Yeah. So when we got away from the theory and started to deal with cases, we got a bit more interested in members, and that was useful for to have somebody from a national understanding as to how things are meant to be handled and what happens here, because he had an awareness of what happened here. So that seemed to work well. Induction for newly elected members was undertaken. I always do that each year and give them a background in the code of conduct, what's expected of them. And as you would expect, most people trying to do the right thing. They're trying to do the right thing for their communities, and they just need a little bit of steer as to what comes with being a councillor. Usually, what does that mean? Exposure and reputation consequences and all that stuff. So, kind of trying to help people, and I just make the emphasis to them that I'm not here to police you. I'm here to try and help you and avoid being policed in that sense. Works with NCOUT, so Northamptonshire County Association of Local Councils. We look after the parishes, and all the parish councils in our district are members of NCOUT. So I work with them, chief exec of NCOUT down in Moody, to try and promote high standards, and we try and assist each other by saying, look, there's an issue in this parish, would you like to try and give them some advice? And that's happened on several occasions. There was one particular council I mentioned them by name, but I mentioned the topic in the papers, where they've had a really turbulent year, and you could work out properly who it is, and you could speak to a fellow councillor here and probably get understand where it is, but I won't name it for the record because we are on tape and all the rest of it. But it's another example of where planning became such a fractious issue. Turmoil in the council, accusations galore, beating people down, if you like, beating councillors down, such that they got to the point of resigning en masse, change of councillors, including some of the protagonists involved. Clark resigned, and then ultimately in January, I think it was this year, one of those new councillors resigned, all of which meant turmoil for some months. I'm hoping it's going to settle down as a result of particular resignations now, realisation of what you can and cannot do as a council. But that takes up a lot of time, and occasionally we do get these cases. I've had other parish councils in the past where I've had to spend a bit of time and effort. But for me, that's the important point. We're trying to make things better by assisting rather than going in with a big stick at the end. But we were trying to assist in that case, but it becomes a bit of an issue. Mystery shoppers, you'll be aware that the committee in the past has supported mystery shoppers, and we do occasionally send them out to various parish councils. And in this case, this parish council was visited, for example, and it's actually being visited several times since because the person's so interested in what they're doing, the mystery shopper that is, and has therefore said, well, I'll keep giving you feedback on this. Okay, it's very helpful. And it's helpful because there's something this council's actually doing wrong, and we're pointing out to them, and NCOUT could go to try again to persuade them to do the right thing. So it's all about good governance. And the mystery shopper also went to the training session organised by NCOUT, and they're training their parish councillors on issues like interest, for example. And the feedback was, I think it was Nick on this occasion, Nick also went to the event, who's not here tonight, otherwise he could perhaps embellish. But he found it to be reassuring, I suppose is the term to use, that the parish councils were getting the right information and the right guidance as he saw. I found it quite a useful session. The trick is there are a lot of, 53 parish councils. That's a lot of councillors, and not all of them will go to one session. So one of the things I think about NCOUT is to try and keep off repeats. In terms of code of conduct, there was a slight amendment in July 2015, which has been dealt with at council in terms of the capacity in particular which the code applies. So when you're acting in the capacity of council, is when the code applies. There's been some deliberation as to whether it should apply when you claim to act or give the impression of acting. Well, we've taken the view now, no, just when you are acting in your capacity. And that would be an objective judgment. So we amended that, and that was issued to the parish councils. And as it stands on today, 50 out of 53 parish councils have adopted essentially the same code as DDC, whether it be the July 15 version or the one before. But we're urging them to do the July 15 one, but essentially they've got the same provisions as what we've got. It makes it easy for them to adopt our code, so they're keen to do that. There are only two who've got a different one at the moment, because one other has agreed in principle to also go to our code. And that's a very healthy position. It makes it a lot easier trying to advise people. I know what I'm advising, particularly in terms of the provisions of our code. So that makes it a lot easier for all concerned. This year, in terms of code, and it's DDC's code, I did make some adjustments to the supplementary code on handling planning matters. Again, planning being the topic. I did agree with the chairman that we take that through to council rather than wait to come to here to save losing 2 or 3 months waiting for it to be potentially agreed and not being able to be deployed. Because it was trying to improve council's ability to engage with their communities without fearing they became accused of being prejudiced towards applicant X or person Y, objector Z, whatever it might be. So it's designed to be on the system, but still reminding them of the need for care. Because accusations are very easily pushed out by people, as you've experienced. So that was agreed by council on the 18th of May. Key topics I've mentioned in passing: interest and predetermination versus predisposition. With my delegate body, will something be allowed? Is not something you should say. Yeah, I think you've got a good point, and I can see why you're concerned about something, and I'll take that up and listen to the evidence further. It's something you can say. So you're being empathetic without being overcommitted. So that's the sort of standard language we use when advising councils. But it's always useful, and I put in here about offering refresher training on that sort of stuff. Because it comes up repeatedly, I suggest that we do that again this year with a training session with that as well. And emphasise the point about leaving the meeting when you declare interest, for example. Because that sometimes needs a bit of a sort of a flash of the eyebrows or something to members as they fall. And then, oh yeah, so, but parish councils is where that issue is actually more prevalent. It's only 1 or 2 occasions in DDC. Parish councils, that comes up there. And some actually kind of refuse to believe. And you think, well, you're just setting yourself up to be accused.
Can I,
Yes.
can I also say that you were saying about a training session? Can it also be more emphasis also to councillors here on the difference between the interests as well?
Yes, difference.
Because you know, still some members do not know, you know, the differences. Some of the councillors have been here for many years. Obviously, it's changed since then, the wording and everything, and it has changed. So I think that's
I think that's absolutely fair.
That's a good, because you must get a few people.
I get questions on that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the language isn't the best in the world.
No, it's not.
It's not as easy memorable as that. So I'm happy to adjust the equipment.
Yeah.
Members are notifying me of changes of interest. Registers are being kept up to date, which is good, because that is something that's very important to do for criminal proceedings purposes if ever the police wanted to take action on that. So people are doing that, and I've received notifications from all the newly elected members of Corporate. The website is duly populated, the registers are duly populated. I did the same in terms of advising parish and town clerks to make sure any new members, and also new cooperative members, often is the case, but also supplied a register of interest forms. I know I've had some, but I will never know whether I've had them. You just can't keep tabs on parish councils like that. That's not how well. But NCAL assist in trying to promote compliance with that requirement to fill in interest forms. And again, as I say, if somebody ultimately is accused of something, they haven't done that, that's an automatic problem for them. It becomes an issue of potential redress through sanction, those kinds. So I've had various updated episodes. In terms of key topic as well, because updated interest is always quite key to making sure people have got that done, because the accusations follow you to declare interest, conflict at meeting. Social media is an interesting one. I know Councillor Howard is sharp on social media, much more than most of me. But social media, in other contexts, has caused some problems. People have, councils, parish councils particularly, have posted things without thinking a little bit carefully as to what they said. One of the difficulties with social media posts that I find as someone who has to potentially investigate is they can get deleted very quickly and very readily, seemingly. Yes. And that's awkward in terms of evidence. Someone said such and such, but they deleted it. Well, I can't really do a lot on that. However, if someone screenshots or whatever, then you've got the potential proof of. But social media, I think, is something to bring into the training.
Definitely.
Yeah, because it's becoming more and more of an issue, and also for encouragement. So I'm intending to put that into the training if you're agreeable. In terms of the complaints, I gave you a hint earlier, and you can see in the report, I only had 7 fresh complaints in 2015-16. We had about 20, I think, before something like that issue. So 7 is pretty low. 2 additional ones were carrying on from 2015, and they'd actually gone through to investigation. But I had to abort that because of the council concerned resigned. As far as the objectives were concerned, they got what they wanted. That wasn't the reason for stopping the investigation. The reason for stopping the investigation was I couldn't complete the investigation properly. My officers couldn't complete it properly, fairly, because certain people weren't going to play ball. And secondly, frankly, it wasn't worth public money pursuing any further on the back of what can I do anyway come sanction time. In any event, the parish has really made recommendations. But couldn't even make recommendations because he was no longer a councillor. So nothing could be done, frankly. And just in case you were concerned that, well, what if you stopped it, then 2 weeks later they came back in as a cooperative member, I did have a period of, okay, you've resigned, I'll just let this dwell for a bit, because I don't want that trick being played. I didn't have any suspicion that that was going to be played, but just in case. Because it is a way round the system, it's not careful. Okay, I'll resign, then I'll come back. No, just let things pan out as we like. But in the end, it was closed. I consulted the independent person, not Dave, because he wasn't around it. Consulted the independent person.
Could I ask a question on that? How long can you allow it to sort of stay open for?
There isn't a set time
So
frame.
it's up to you.
Yeah, it's local arrangements in that sense. But I've used the word in the report in terms of handling complaints, prompt, because we can be much more prompt than before. But in that case, I think I had about 3 months, something like that. Yeah, that period. I didn't want to do weeks. That was one issue. But it is up to ourselves. But one of the problems with the old regimes, they could take the whole time. And that wasn't fair on the subject councillor, let alone anyone else. There was nothing to be accused of. Solved those 2 complaints, that ended with a halt to the investigation. But because we haven't had that situation before, I've suggested in the report on page 12 a little tweak to go into the complaint handling arrangements. I've italicised the relevant piece, but if I think there's going to be a problem in actually having a fair, just, proper final report, I think it's only fair, just, proper that the investigation is brought in. But I can only think of the scenario where somebody's frankly resigned. I can't think of why else would we do that. Or it becomes suddenly very incapacitated, perhaps, not able to answer defence.
Yeah, I think if I could add something on that, I think you're right. And I think what you'd find is it's probably going to be the people that are quite politically motivated people, very, you can tell them politically motivated, but the kind of people who want to come back. Just aren't they?
Yes.
If you're involved in a parish at a level where you're not seeing it as something more than it could be, then you'll probably resign at that seat or never see it again.
Yeah.
But I would guess that would be your sort of red flag, that if something's very politically motivated, the suspicion might be that they'll come back in some capacity.
But you get a sense, particularly during investigation, you get a sense of what parties are like.
Yeah.
So you make a kind of judgment, and you can also tap into some more objective knowledge than the VA can.
Like you said, if somebody is that way inclined, they're probably very much using Facebook and Twitter motivation to make some things anyway, even if they're not being irresponsible with the way they put it, they may still put things out, and that's probably a little clue, isn't it?
It's a signal.
Signal.
Quite right. So I made that suggestion for inclusion in the arrangements. I also give the members of the committee, as you know, and the independent person, the redacted versions of decisions. We've had batch copies of those decisions. Now, that gives you a deeper sense. So what we're redacting is the names, basically, of the councillors and the parish councils, as it tends to be, because all these complaints were parish councils. Because I don't want you to get the impression of, oh, that's that parish council again, oh, they've got a problem. Because it might be unfair, it might be each individual case just happens to be that council sort of thing. So that's why I do it. But you get a deeper sense of what's actually happened. You can see the kind of topics I'm summarising here, if you like. But because we didn't have an investigation that went through to final stages, that hasn't been here. So you haven't been very busy, and nor have the independent persons as a result. But I'll just touch on one thing before. I think for 2 years now running, we've had desire to have the police sign up to the protocol. I've pursued every time, several times. Funny enough, I think it was the day after the day before I produced this report. I think it was the day before. I had a contact out of the blue from the police saying, "Oh, I remember we were talking about this a while ago. Is it still an issue?" Yes, still it is. And I've not heard anything since. I followed up, etc. Frankly, I've put in the report and I stand by it. I don't think it's worth pursuing. I think, to be fair to the police, they've got other things to worry about. Don't think they need to make a celebrity stance in this area. If they choose to get involved, they can do, and they know of the intent that I've got to work with them and make sure that I don't jeopardise their investigation. But if they did have the investigation, I've got a good relationship with the police on this sort of basis anyway, and I'm sure they'd be in contact, and I'm sure I'd be able to say, "You do what you need to do, and I'll just contact them."
If you're all right, Chair, I'll just ask one final question. If that's okay. I noticed when you've been through the papers, there's a few times you know it's alleged or disrespectful behaviour is used. From my small thinking of some parish councils, none of them are recorded in any way. And that seems a bit of a shame, because you would think in this modern era that would be a very good way of, if they were recorded in the same way that we do ours, that might keep some of the issues at the heat of an argument to a more respectable level, and also it's equally very useful if an investigation is required.
Could be useful evidence, I agree with that, although you can say things in a way which are very pleasant, but your look gives away what you
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So it can work both ways. And I'll venture to suggest that initially it keeps people on their toes, if you like, but after a while they've forgotten it's there. I take our committee, for example. If you looked around, you wouldn't have a reminder that would be recorded. But we are, of course.
That's true.
You probably want what they have in studios, a big flashing light on air or something like that. That might. But as evidence, it could well be used. Yes, you just have to accept it's not necessarily the only source. But what you could do is something like that. I've heard this. Tell me what was different now. That's what you said, isn't it? It's on tape.
Yeah.
That usually would probably eke out a confession in a normal situation. So I think it's fair.
Chairman, can I take a contrary point of view, please? Because I think this is very important. I mean, a complaint regarding a non-disclosure of an interest can lead to a criminal prosecution. And we've sought some guidance from the police. I think that every councillor, whether it's a parish councillor or a district councillor or a county councillor, would appreciate understanding this a little bit closer and understanding how the police feel about this. And I think that if we were to seek, and I think we should seek this, and I think we should carry on pursuing it, the new Police and Crime Commissioner, Stephen Mould, whose hustings I attended, said he wanted absolute and utter openness, that he wanted common sense policing. I think to be a councillor and to have this sword of Damocles hanging over you when 3 or 4 lines from the police might just help you is something that I think for them to evade it is actually them not fulfilling their responsibilities. This isn't a big thing. It's not going to stop major investigations. It needs a senior clerk somewhere sitting down and doing some work on it.
Sorry.
You carry on.
Yeah, I was saying, my desire is to have a protocol. Don't get me wrong. It's just the realism, frankly, and my contact that I don't think it's going to get anywhere. And I'm just concerned that the committee is looking like it's powerless. The more times it asks, the more times it kind of not gets a progress. But I have no problem if the committee wanted to.
Could I make a personal approach to Mr. Mould and tell him that I think the councillors could benefit from it?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that we've tried it from this point of view. I've served on the Standards Committee of this council for a very long time. I served on the Standards Committee for the police when there was a district authority. And I actually think they're avoiding this, and I think they're being unhelpful to every single councillor across Northampton. And I think that I'm very happy to fire off a letter saying I feel they're missing an opportunity.
Would that letter go from us or from you?
I'm happy to state who I am with the committee's authority to state that I am a member of the committee and to write to say that I'm disappointed they haven't done this.
Yeah, if you so you write as you're an independent member of the council's committee. I'm writing that.
I mean, I think that's what I'm here for.
Is everybody happy with that? Yeah?
Very happy. Very good suggestion.
Very good idea.
And what you can usefully do, I suggest, because we will minute obviously this conversation, you can cite, look, these are kind of deliberations that were raised at the committee, and use that as you see fit to assist in the case.
I mean, letters should be short and precise, and I will make sure that I copy the monitoring officer and a copy of my letter.
So I would love to have reported, yes, or been agreed to, but I can't. it was only right to report back to you on that. Okay, independent persons, David, latest appointment, keen, and I have warned David that I don't expect too much work because we haven't had a history of it for the last year or 2 or 3. That said,
It's like buses.
yeah,
That's the
you
problem.
never know what might come.
That's exactly right, because it was 3 years ago we had two standard hearings and 1 appeals, didn't we? Yeah, and I can tell you sit here and you think it's not much going on, but when it's actually an appeals committee, a hearing, it can get quite heated, as both were when I was chairman, and you were there, weren't you? And they were very, very heated. And very interesting, because obviously you have everything to follow, protocol and everything. But it's very interesting.
I can honestly say, if I may share, is that one of the problems is always with these things, when you don't have anything happen, it's very easy to get complacent when you're sitting this side or you're over there. You can just go off the boil a little, and then when something comes up, you're just not in the right place to actually tackle it properly. And that's always the issue. That's why it's so good to have those refreshers and insight, ideas to push in new ways is very useful. So it's good that nothing's happened, but we just have to be mindful that if it does happen, it'll probably be in 3s.
But what I'll also add is because things don't often happen on this committee. I mean, I've been on and off it right from the start when I first became a councillor. But I think that some councillors aren't actually interested as much in it because you don't really, there's not much to sink your teeth into, but it actually is. And if you get into it, and like I said, we hope we don't want anything, we don't want any appeals hearings, but if it is, it really is interesting. And so we standards, and when we did the appeals, which start here, that was very interesting as well, wasn't it? And that was also, you sit there and you think, obviously, same as planning, the animal you go in and you listen to what's being said, and then sometimes you change your view or your opinion just because what something's just said. And it's so interesting. It really is interesting, but they're so different, each one, and then from the appeals to standards. But it is really interesting. That's why I keep coming back.
And intense at the time.
Oh, it is, yeah, really.
And the reason for the intensity is notwithstanding concerns nationally and locally about sanctions, the availability of sanctions. One sanction that people worry about is the effect on their reputation. Because whatever public statement is made about there was a case, people will perceive, there must have been a problem. And they're not going to distinguish between the type of sanction that you can apply. So training is required. That person's not even equipped to do the job of going to, etc. Becomes an issue out there. So nobody likes to have that accusation over them. Nobody likes to face it in a hearing. And they will defend passionately. Sometimes we found in our experience, haven't we, blindly. But because of the fear of the repetition. And that is... It's a positive thing in one way because it helps keep people in check, if you like, and not do too many silly things. But I don't want you to think that I suspect every council around the country here has got some problem. No, we're talking about 1 or 2, and that's what we have to focus on. And nationally, there are 1 or 2 damn sight worse than what we have to deal with, and you wonder how they can possibly be in public office, frankly. But that's known nationally, and those are case studies as well for training sessions. So, on the independent persons, I would like to just invite you to pass thanks for Andrew Foster's contribution. He was very helpful for a 3-year term with us as an independent person. Did a great job. It was very good for me to bounce ideas off, for example, because we do have wash-up meetings with the independent persons. And so when we do that, we get some further insight, just as with the independent members, we get some further insights to, we could do this perhaps a bit differently. There was nothing fundamental this year, because there wasn't anything fundamental to happen. Andrew's done a good job. So you've got a summary of what's happened, and you've got the advice, Chairman, captured on page 7, as to what I'm suggesting is appropriate for the committee to agree to resolve. Being generally a positive record, I suggest, low numbers. but we must be complacent, as Councillor Connors said. Mystery shoppers is a good thing, I think. We keep it going. A learning and development session again, but with additional topics, and you've added one into what I've got here. So if we add into that recommendation, I suggest interest, the distinction between interests. Yeah, so widen that. In fact, I'll just expand what's in there now on the day. So that's what we do that. And now NCAL will be invited to do the same for parish members in particular. Just the complaint handling arrangements as per the italicised text. And then what we do each year is key messages, just summarise key messages, send those through to the parish clerks. And by parish, I mean parish and town council. Send that through to the clerks. They appreciate that. They can put that through to their councils or however they wish, that's up to them. But then people can see, yeah, these are the sorts of issues, so just be a little bit cautious, colleagues, what you say and do, etc. But also, give you a bit of licence to do things as well, because that isn't a problem, for example. Predisposition versus predetermination in particular. So those are the 5 recommendations.
Do we have to agree on it, or do we have to have a proposal because it's resolved?
It would be good to have a proposal in a second.
Quite happy to propose.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Connors. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Everybody in favour? Yeah. Okay. A bit quiet.
They want a case to get stuck into, don't they? They want to hear it.
You don't want things through.
That's my first meeting.
People trying to take it away.
Honestly, you will get into it. It's very interesting, it really is. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I lost my. Thank you. Item 5, record of complaints and record of Daventry District Council dispensations. Thank you. Over to you.
Joe,
Okay.
I'm not going to expand on this. All this does is actually give you kind of a summary in case form of what I've just been talking about. We see it as appropriate to keep it as a schedule for record purposes. It's something easy for other people to pick up and digest rather than read through narrative. So it does get quite handy. I've also captured on there dispensation. I actually don't write them, but sometimes we get dispensation requests. I've had 2 in the previous year. So you'll see that there's 1 complaint on this schedule awaiting assessment. Well, in fact, there are 2. So there's another one that's come in the last week. Again, those are parish level accusations. So we'll look into those.
Excuse me, I know this sounds, I'm not teaching you to, drink tea or whatever, I don't know what we're saying is, but do you all know what, thank you, so do you all know what this dispensation means in this? Yeah, would you like to?
Okay, I'll just say,
okay, rather than, if you could just let.
I think I touched on it for David's benefit, I can't remember, I probably did, but dispensation. So if a member's got an interest, but they think they ought to be allowed to take part in the event, they can apply for a dispensation. Apply in writing to myself, and it's for me to judge whether a dispensation should be granted. It can be something quite generic, and frankly is an issue. So, for example, I'm a member of, it's not even National Trust. There's something like company, for example, but they don't have a role in the company, which means they get any gain from it. They're just token company. So if you think of T-Deckel registration, a couple of our councils have got dispensation to contribute to debates about housing, for example, in committee, in council, despite them being T-Deckel members, because they have no particular conflict. T-Deckel was set up by the council to achieve housing. They get no personal gain, etc. But because they're a company, director role, that is disclosable interest, accumulated interest, inverted commas, as far as the regulations are concerned. So that's a dispensation. I'll give you a contrast, and I did suggest to the parish council clerk that you should have done this, in my view, although by the law they could have done and did do, which is that they had 2 councillors making a plan application, being considered by the parish council to submit comments back to the district council. The committee that was looking at this wasn't going to be quorum without those 2 members. So if those 2 members had to leave the room, they weren't going to be quorum. So they decided to grant dispensation to those 2 members so that they could ensure the parish council's response went back. Well, I'm afraid they've got an interest, a conflict of interest, and the parish council judgment isn't actually being served by having the applicants affecting that judgment and being the majority view on that judgment. So I would not have granted such a dispensation. Planning, as I've said earlier, is the source of trouble mostly. And why would you do that in that case? And quite honestly, I said to the clerk, what you should have done is just postpone the meeting, wait until a date where you knew you had enough other councillors to actually hold the meeting, and not have the conflicted councillors present. That was a classic case of, so it's a bit like your neighbour's going to put something up and you don't like it, and you sit on the council trying to influence it. It doesn't quite fit well with the community then, but that's a fair way of decision making. But that's within the parish council's gift to do that. And I think, to be fair to the clerk, in hindsight, she said, yeah, perhaps I should have done. So yeah, that's been done. Luckily, if you like, the decision's actually made by the district council, ultimately, as to whether it's allowed or not, taking into account all sorts of representation. But that's an illustration of the sort of things where there's a lack of clarity as to what's right and wrong, because, as I've said in this committee before, what's come out of the Localism Act in terms of this regime is a bit of a fudgy time. It's not as clear as it could have been. And that's because of the way it was a transfer from, if you remember, for those of you who have been around for a few years now, there's a desire to have no standards regime. Councillors will be elected by the electorate, and that's the judgment call that's only required. And then it got pared back so that there was some kind of standards regime, particularly by the House of Lords as it was then, and therefore we've got a kind of half-baked system. And one of the examples of half-baked approach is the dispensation. But very few requests come anyway, and most councillors know when it's appropriate to say, hang on a minute, I've got a conflict. Common sense prevails, to be honest. So nothing more to add on that. I don't know, there's nothing particularly to resolve it. So that's it.
No, that's it then. Item 6, urgent business. Oh, go on, please. Okay then, that's it. And thank you everyone for coming. And
just make a comment, Chair. Any person who puts themselves up for election for public duty has to go through the trauma of an election, and then, of course, if they're elected, they come and serve and offer themselves public service, and they certainly don't do it for the money. But they are asked to present themselves in very, very high standards. We must make sure that we do everything we possibly can to assist them in understanding those standards and making sure that they don't find themselves being penalised unnecessarily for their generosity.
Very fair. That is a fair point, and I know we just nearly finished and couldn't quite say it, but also that's a good point. And also I keep thinking to myself, and I do say it, that I think when a councillor starts, I think it's good for every councillor that is actually at the district council to come on the standards committee at some point during their time, especially if they're long-standing, because it will give you a better insight, and especially when you're on things like planning, because as we know, Diana's on there, and things do happen, and at least you know where you are, and you know what you can say, whether you should remove yourself and everything. So I think it's very important. I've said this for quite a while, but yeah. Thank you very much. So at 5 to 7, is it 5 to 6 minutes to 7? That's it. Meeting closed. Thank you for all of you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.